David, what was the L word you used for the birds? L. Leucistic. There are no words that big in today's sermon. So I was thinking about that. I was like, man, it's pretty bad. So you went from heavy to light. Okay. So we're going to start with thinking about promises. We just sang about promises, right? Standing on the promises. And I want to think about what God's promises are all about. And first I want to step back and think about what is a promise. And so advertising makes a lot of promises. So I want you to think about, I will have one ad sort of thing. I want you to say what comes to mind, what promise comes to mind when you see this. Saving money, that's right. Does anybody remember the slogan? Yeah. 15 minutes or less can save you 15% or more.
That's not how it works.
Yeah, I don't know where that comes from. So when we see the gecko that has the weird accent, we think of a promise. The company makes a promise that, this can save you money. And the promise says something about who the company is. So we think of that company is going to try to save us money as something of their goal. Apparently, Warren Buffett is concerned about how much money we save. So a promise is a declaration or assurance made to another person with respect to the future. Now, when I think about promises, I think about more than advertising. I think about what are God's promises all about? Think about, we just sang Standing on the Promises. I don't know, for people who listen to Family Life, there's a song, Promises, that comes on and it gets stuck in my head. I'll play the chorus for you. Oh, I have the words. Maybe you remember this. I can't get this song out of my mind. It just kind of keeps going through. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to play it. So, hold on to the promises. Jesus is alive, so hold tight. Hold on to the promises. Hold on to the promises. You know how that song over and over? One of these days we'll play it. It's this song. It just sticks in my head. I think, hold on to the promises. Hold on to the promises of Jesus. Well, what are those promises? I can think of a lot of times I've been let down in life. Now, it's safer for me to go back to a long time ago in life to talk about times I've been disappointed. I think about promises. So I think back to when I was junior high. We've talked about Commodore 64 computers before. You have to be my age or older. But, I needed a Commodore 64 computer with all these great things like the cassette tape drive that would run it and all those great things. I was let down. Blow darts? Who doesn't need blow darts? Right? And so Christmas would roll around and I would expect my parents, because it's a promise that God promises good things for those who trust Him, and I think, my parents didn't get the message. All right? No. All right. And so next, and then I think, there's other things I was really let down on. Like this is a struggle. It's a famous picture, I guess. But I think of the struggles I was in those years in which I would hope for deliverance from the 17-year-old guy who was in my 8th grade gym class. And so I'd hope for deliverance. It didn't come. And then I remember, even at that time, I was really concerned about family members who were dying. And that their healing would come about. And I was let down. So what are the promises of God? If promises are a doing and give us a signal or a sign of who's behind those promises, I think, what are those promises that we're standing on? That's what today's passage, I think, gives us a clue about. How deep do these promises go? We're going to take a look at Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 4. It's on page 8. The Lord had said to Abram, "Leave your country, your people, and your father's household, and go to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you I will curse, and all the peoples on earth will be blessed through you." So Abram left as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. A few things to think about with these promises. On a superficial level, I think about he's promised a great name. That sounds like fame and fortune to me. That's a pretty good promise. Think of the promise of a great nation, achievement, acknowledgement. From Abraham is going to be something great. And then I think about blessings and curses. It's like this security and control thing. That people who are nice to you get good things. People who are not nice to you are going to get bad things. Sounds like a good deal. Did Abram's life play out this way? Like, was it all good stuff? All right, for those of you who are shaking your head no, prove it.
He feared for his life a few times from foreign rulers.
There's that. All right, maybe.
He ran out of food, so he went to Egypt.
Famine could be a downside.
Waited so long to have a son, had not the promised son, probably went against God's will.
Yeah, so he had to wait till he's 100 to have a son, and then there's the whole family turmoil thing with Ishmael.
Asked to sacrifice the son. He was loyal to God.
Yeah. You know, there are times where he's happy, but these things are indications that it wasn't all happy. That there's something to God's promises that maybe aren't all connected to the happy meter. When we think about these promises, it's sort of like a crescendo. What's a crescendo?
It's bigger.
It gets bigger. Is that Italian? That's Italian, isn't it? There, David. Touche. I got something sophisticated in the sermon. All right, so there's a crescendo. All right, it's getting louder, it's getting bigger. And so we end in verse 3 with, "In you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." And so if we walk through this, God's telling Abraham, "You're some dude that I'm going to bless. And from there, I'm going to bless your family. And coming out of your family is going to become a nation. And I'm going to bless that nation. And eventually, there is going to be one who comes from your family that will bless the world." And he's got a name. His name is Jesus. Call to worship this morning was Galatians 3, in which it talked about this. It quoted the end of this verse, that all the peoples of the world will be blessed through this one, the idea of the seed of Abraham, who is Jesus Christ. So what is getting at is this promise. The big promise isn't about whether or not Abraham's going to have a lot of gold or if he's going to end up really happy. It's about the world being saved for eternity. It's kind of a big picture sort of thing. So what the promise is getting at is that there's a purpose. Over and over again, we get a promise from God that I will be your God, you will be my people, I will be present with you. Over and over again, we get this promise. And that promise is here, very clear with Abraham, in which I will be your God. You can trust me. These are the good things that will come from me. You will be my people. You will rely on me. And my presence will be with you. But there's a funny thing in life that we lose sight of this big picture promise. And I have an illustration. We did this at men's group, and some people did not like it. Josiah. So we'll try it again. Okay. This is a fish. His name is Fishy Fishy. Okay. So Fishy Fishy is actually alive. All right? And Fishy Fishy goes to the beach with me. old fishy fishy. All right, be careful. All right, so fishy fishy is in Sam's arms looking at the water on the beach. Is fishy fishy happy? No, why not? You guys are sharper than you look. All right, so I practiced that one really hard. All right. Don't remember anything else about today. Just remember that singer. All right. So fishy fishy is unhappy, very grumpy. So I said, I'm going to fix fishy fishy's problem. I'm going to give him lots of cash. Lots of cash. Is fishy fishy happy now? All right. So how about I give fishy fishy lots of worms, and I get a bunch of other bass to join fishy fishy on the beach. So Sam's got bass all over him now. Is fishy fishy happy?
You're just not giving him what he wants.
Well, doesn't he want worms?
No.
All right.
Something to breathe.
So what do I need to do for fishy fishy to truly be happy? Back in the water. All right. Thanks, Sam. We can be like fishy fishy, in which we desperately want to be in the water. We want to be in relationship with God. We want these promises of God, that He will be our God, we will be His people, that we will know His presence no matter what we go through. But sometimes we get caught up in the happy meter. Well, if I just had a little bit more of this, I'll breathe later. Or if I could just have this experience, or if this would just happen, and we forget about the fact that we desperately need water to be in. The promise to Abraham is that he's going to be in water throughout his life. That God is going to be with him in those hard times, in that famine, in those times in which there would be upheaval in his home. God was there. Sometimes God works through blessings. God works through amazingly good things to get us where we need to be. Sometimes He works through the bad and the ugly. Romans chapter 4 talks about Abraham again, and part of it talks about his response. How Abraham responded. And I want to think a little bit about how we respond to faith. And there's a couple of ground rules that we need to remember. First of all is that we don't earn God's promise. So Abraham wasn't a really good guy who was better than everybody else, and so God gave him these promises. It's God's grace. Just like we are saved not because we're good enough or we do enough good things, it's because Jesus died for us. So first of all, God's promise is based on grace. The second piece is that God's plan won't be broken. It won't be thwarted. But we have a choice of whether or not we're personally going to participate. And that's where this last one fits in is, are we going to be all in with our faith, our response? Back to Abraham. All right, this is a fancy pointer. All right, so there's Hebron. Hebron's on the map. That's always important to remember. Okay, at the end of chapter 11, Abram and his father Terah and Lot, they headed out from the city of Ur. Terah decided that they were going to head to Canaan. And they went part way, they got to Haran, and then they said, well, this is good enough. This is a good spot, we'll stop here. That's where we pick up God talking to Abram in verse 1, where He says, time to keep going. Make it the rest of the way to Canaan. Keep going down here. But they'd already gone that far. That was a good spot. They'd gone halfway, and God was saying, you need to be all in. There's a cost of being all in. Anybody recognize that? It's an egg separator. Are those real? I thought it was just something made up on clip art. I didn't know. All right. Afterwards, somebody can tell me why you separate eggs. So in this, we get the idea of separating, and there's a cost of separating for Abram. He had to leave his home twice. He had to leave family behind. He had to leave friends behind. He had to leave everything that he was used to behind. There's a cost to following God with all that we have. It's not easy. And I think about our response to God can be similar to leaving those two cities. On the one hand, following God can be like leaving Ur. So the first time when Terah and Abram left Ur, that first city, they were picking up and saying, we're leaving all this behind. We're going to go at least halfway. And so for us, that might be like leaving the thought of, well, there's a big guy upstairs. He'll like me, maybe. To moving to this idea of a personal relationship with Jesus. This movement from, there's probably a God out there, to, there is a God who wants to know me personally. That's the movement from Ur and moving out. Now, a spot that I think is just as critical is leaving Haran. All right, that was the city where they were halfway, and God told Abram, now's the time, keep going. Think about our lives. Abram was committed to get to that point. It wasn't easy to get to that spot. If I was Abram, I would have been ready to say, God, I've done enough for you. I've already moved once. I've already pulled up stakes. This is enough. I'm 75, and I'm still waiting for that kid you talked about. Right? There's lots. For us, how often is it that we get halfway and say, God, I've gone far enough. I know the forgiveness of Jesus Christ. I know that God is a loving God. I know that. But we have a hard time saying, you know what, Jesus is Lord of my life. That he's so much of a priority that everything comes second. That Jesus is the leader of my life. That's the movement of going from halfway to all in. And that is a hard price to pay. It means going through spiritual disciplines, of really praying and spending time with God. It means spending time with other Christians, a priority. It means being stretched and growing. Oftentimes it means putting our own goals on the side to follow Christ first. It is so easy to be satisfied with superficial happiness. Happy is good, but what we need is water. And our challenge today is to think about, is that my first goal in life? Is that what I really yearn after more than anything else? To know God more.